The classroom erupted into laughter, cruel and mocking. For a moment, Shayla Johnson froze. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stood at the front of the class, her breath caught in her throat. "You sound so funny," one of the boys sneered. "What's that? Some weird mix of Southern and... what? Ghetto?" Shayla's face flushed, the room spinning around her. She gripped her papers tighter, trying to keep her composure, but her voice shook when she spoke again. "That's not funny," she said, her words low and heavy. "I don't sound like anything. This is just how I speak." But the laughter didn't stop. It was the same every day. Every single day for the past 3 years. They'd laugh. They'd mock her accent. They'd make fun of her hair, her clothes, and even her skin. And all she ever did was stay silent. The loudest voice in the room? Always someone else's. But today was different. Shayla had been through a lot in her life, far more than any teenager should ever have to endure. Growing up in a small, predominantly white town in Alabama, she often felt like an outsider. Her mother, a hard-working single parent, had always emphasized the value of education, instilling in Shayla the belief that her mind was the only thing they couldn't take from her. But no matter how hard she worked, no matter how much she excelled in class, there was always that one thing no one could let go of: her accent. It wasn't even a heavy accent. It was just a product of the neighborhood she grew up in, a rich tapestry of influences. Southern roots, a touch of black pride, and an honest reflection of her surroundings. Yet, to her classmates, it was a source of ridicule. Her classmates, led by the popular clique of Jake, Emily, and the others, had a field day with it. Every time Shayla spoke in class, they mocked her. Her speech was unintelligible to them. They thought it was a joke, an easy target for their petty cruelty. Shayla didn't say a word. She just let the jabs slide. But deep inside, it was chipping away at her, piece by piece. Her mom had always said, "Don't let them change who you are, baby girl. The world will try to, but you've got the power to rise above it." But that was hard to believe when every single day felt like a war zone. One afternoon, things escalated. During a class presentation on modern American culture, Shayla was asked to present an excerpt from a book by Maya Angelou. As she read aloud, she could feel the eyes of her classmates on her. She didn't look up, but she heard the snickers. "Why do you talk like that?" Emily snorted from the back of the room. "Sounds like you're trying to be educated, but it's coming off all wrong." Shayla clenched her jaw. Her heart raced, but she stayed silent. She finished the excerpt quickly, and the class barely clapped, most of them still laughing. Later that evening, Shayla's mother could see something had changed. "You're not yourself tonight," her mother said softly, watching Shayla as she stared out the window. Shayla turned, her face determined. "I'm done being silent, Mom. I'm going to prove them wrong." Her mom raised an eyebrow, a mix of pride and concern flashing across her face. "What do you mean, Shayla?" "I'm going to enter the debate championship," Shayla said, her voice unwavering. Her mom's eyes widened. "A debate competition? But baby, those people, you know how they are." "I know," Shayla said, her voice quiet but full of resolve. "But that's exactly why I need to do this. I'm going to show them that I am more than just my accent. I'm going to show them who I really am." Her mom smiled, then took her hand. "I'm proud of you, Shayla, and no matter what, I'll be right behind you." Let us know where you are watching from in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and turn on your notification bell so that you can be the first to enjoy our amazing stories. In the days that followed, Shayla threw herself into preparation. She practiced speeches, argued with herself in front of the mirror, read books on persuasion and rhetoric, and prepared for every angle they might throw at her. Her heart burned with a singular focus: to prove them wrong. When the day of the regional debate championship arrived, Shayla entered the auditorium with a mix of excitement and nerves. The room was filled with high school debaters, most of them from the wealthier, more privileged schools. There were whispers as she walked past, as people took note of her accent. And then, she saw him, Jake, the leader of the bullies who had tormented her. His smirk was unmistakable. "You're really doing this?" Jake laughed, nudging Emily, who smirked too. "You don't even belong here." Shayla didn't respond. She couldn't. She just walked past them, taking her seat at the table. Her opponent, a well-spoken, confident young man, looked at her with curiosity, his eyebrow raised. "I'm ready when you are," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. The debate began. Shayla spoke. Her words flowed effortlessly now, a voice of clarity and reason. She didn't stammer. She didn't second-guess. Her arguments were precise, cutting through the room with sharp logic. She could see the shock on her opponent's face as she countered his points with ease. And as the debate continued, she felt the energy shift in the room. By the time the judges made their decision, there was no doubt. Shayla had won. She walked up to the stage, holding her trophy high. The room erupted into applause, and for the first time, Shayla felt the weight of the crowd's approval. But when she glanced over at Jake, his expression had shifted. No longer smug, he now looked uncomfortable. He had underestimated her. And now, Shayla had the last laugh. But this wasn't the end. It wasn't enough to just win one competition. Shayla knew that now. She could feel it deep in her bones. The battle wasn't over. She had proven herself at the regional level, but there was a bigger stage waiting. The National Debate Championship. And if she could make it there, if she could take the crown, Shayla would prove once and for all that they were wrong. She wasn't just the girl with the accent. She was the one they'd never see coming. But there was a problem. Someone else wanted that title too. Someone willing to do anything to stop her from taking the spotlight. As Shayla left the competition with her trophy in hand, she received a cryptic text. "You won this time. But the real fight is just beginning." Shayla held the text message in her hand, staring at the cryptic words. "You won this time. But the real fight is just beginning." Her fingers trembled as she looked around at the crowded hallway of the regional debate tournament. The clattering of voices, the nervous energy of competitors all around her, it all felt so distant, as if she were standing outside of it all. The trophy in her hands now felt like a hollow victory. It was a symbol of her triumph, but also a reminder that someone, somewhere, was waiting to knock her down. As Shayla turned to leave the venue, she felt a tap on her shoulder. She froze. It was Jake, the very face of the bullies who had mocked her for years. His smirk was gone. Now, there was something colder in his eyes, something that made her skin crawl. "I saw your win," Jake said, his voice low. "But don't think for a second it's over. You're not one of them, not one of the winners who belong in this world. You're just a girl with a fancy accent and a silver trophy. It won't last." Shayla's heart pounded. She wanted to say something, anything, but her voice caught in her throat. She could feel her pulse in her ears. Her breath came in shallow gasps. Jake stepped closer, his face now inches from hers. "Enjoy it while you can, Shayla. You won't make it to the national stage. Trust me." Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing there in a sea of confusion and doubt. 2 weeks later, Shayla found herself in an entirely new world. The National Debate Championship was being held in Washington, D.C., and the stakes were higher than ever. The best of the best were gathered here, students from across the nation, polished, eloquent, and confident. And there, at the center of it all, was Shayla. She'd never seen so many competitors dressed in tailored suits, speaking with perfect diction, and debating like they were born with silver spoons in their mouths. The sheer prestige of it all made her feel small, at least, at first. But the fire in Shayla's heart burned brighter than the brightest spotlight in that room. She had come this far. She couldn't stop now. The night before the competition, she sat alone in her hotel room, rehearsing her arguments in front of the mirror. Her reflection seemed like a stranger, someone she barely recognized. Was she truly capable of this? Could she really go up against some of the most well-trained students in the country? What if she failed? Then she thought of her mom. Of all the times her mom had pushed her to rise above the hate, to turn her pain into power. "I can do this," Shayla whispered to herself, her voice echoing in the quiet room. "I've already done it. They can't stop me." The first round of debates began, and Shayla's nerves were on full display. Her opponent was a tall, confident young man named Lance Harper, a golden boy from a prestigious private school in California. His family had money. He had connections. He was every bit the person Shayla had always been told she couldn't be. But Shayla wasn't backing down. As the debate began, Lance spoke with smooth precision, his arguments well-rehearsed and perfectly timed. He mocked her accent at every turn, suggesting that she was unqualified to speak on issues that required real intellectual rigor. The room tensed, and Shayla could feel the sting of the mockery. But instead of crumbling, Shayla fought back. Her voice was clear and strong, each argument cutting through Lance's with laser precision. She used his condescension to fuel her passion, dismantling his points one by one. By the time the round ended, the judges were visibly impressed. Shayla had held her ground, and Lance, while still smug, had been knocked off balance. The crowd was silent as the judges deliberated. When the verdict was announced, it was unanimous. Shayla had won. As she walked off the stage, the weight of her victory felt incredible. But as she made her way through the corridors back to her seat, she caught sight of Lance and his friends. They were whispering, their eyes narrowed with contempt. "You don't belong here," one of Lance's friends muttered under his breath, loud enough for her to hear. But Shayla held her head high. She didn't need to respond. She had already said everything she needed to with her words. It wasn't until later that evening, when she checked her phone, that she saw something that made her blood run cold. Another text. This one was from Jake. "You think you're a big shot now, huh? You think you've won? You're not even in the same league as the real competitors. You'll be exposed for what you really are." The message sent a chill through Shayla. What did Jake mean by exposed? Was he planning something? Was he involved in this competition somehow? But there was no time to dwell on it. The next round of debates was already scheduled for the morning, and Shayla had no intention of letting anyone stop her now. Not Jake, not Lance, not anyone. But in the back of her mind, the question remained, who else was out to get her? The next day, Shayla went into the debate with all her strength. The pressure of being in the national spotlight was enormous, but she was determined to rise above it. Round after round, she triumphed, each victory pushing her closer to her ultimate goal. Her confidence soared, her words became sharper, and her presence on stage was undeniable. But as the final rounds approached, something strange began to happen. Everywhere she went, there were whispers, eyes on her, smirks from the competitors who had once looked down on her. It was becoming clear that her rise wasn't going unnoticed, but not in a good way. After her final round before the championship, one of the judges pulled her aside. It was Lance. "Shayla, you've been great. But don't think for a second you've won. I've been getting messages about you, about who you really are." Shayla's heart skipped a beat. "What are you talking about?" Lance leaned in close. "The truth about your past is about to come out, and when it does, you won't even be able to speak your name. You've been played." Shayla stood frozen, her mind racing. What was Lance talking about? What truth? And how did he know? As the crowd in the auditorium began to murmur, Shayla's eyes locked onto the stage. A large screen flickered to life, the words "Breaking News" flashing across the screen. And then, a video. "Nice of you to join us, Shayla," Jake called, his tone mocking yet somehow sinister. "I was just telling Mr. Thompson here about your little debate victory. Too bad it won't matter now, huh?" Shayla stopped in her tracks, her body tense. The air felt thick with the weight of his words. "What are you talking about, Jake? Why are you here? And why is Mr. Thompson with you?" Mr. Thompson finally looked up, his face grim. "Shayla, I didn't want it to come to this, but..." "You didn't want it to come to what?" Shayla snapped, her voice shaking with a mix of fear and anger. "What have you done?" Jake's laugh echoed through the alleyway. "What we've done, Shayla, is give you a taste of reality. Your whole life, you've been spoon-fed this idea that you're special, that you matter. But now, well, we're going to show everyone who you really are." Shayla took a step back, her mind racing. What had he said? What was he planning? Shayla, this has to be handled, Mr. Thompson said, his voice barely above a whisper. The video, it's only the beginning. There's more. There's a lot more. A cold knot formed in Shayla's stomach. Her world was unraveling in front of her, and she didn't know how to stop it. Jake's grin widened. You think you're the only one with secrets, Shayla? The only one with a past you can't outrun. His eyes narrowed. We've already made sure your little debate win won't count. This game's over. Shayla felt the blood drain from her face. What do you mean? What do you have on me? Mr. Thompson's eyes softened for a fraction of a second, as if regretting what he was about to do. Shayla, there's a file. A record. We've uncovered some things from your past that aren't in your favor. Shayla's thoughts spun as she tried to piece it all together. What past? What could they have uncovered? She had always been upfront about her history. She was proud of it. Her struggles, her journey to where she was today, had only made her stronger. But now it seemed like everything she'd ever worked for was about to be torn apart. Jake stepped closer, savoring her discomfort. You really think you could rise above it all? That all the people who mocked you, who judged you, would just let you waltz into their world? That's not how it works, Shayla. Shut up, she screamed, her voice cracking with emotion. You can't do this. You don't know me. You don't know what I've been through. I've earned my place here. I've earned everything I've done. But Jake wasn't listening. Instead, he turned to Mr. Thompson and nodded. The administrator slowly reached into his jacket and pulled out the file, the one that held the very thing Shayla had feared most. He opened it slowly, as though he were savoring the moment, before handing it to Shayla. Shayla's hands shook as she took the file, her eyes scanning the papers quickly. The first sheet was a birth certificate, hers, but with a small discrepancy that she didn't understand. The next page was a medical record, showing something that made her stomach twist even more. And then, there was something that caught her breath, a police report. It was from years ago, when Shayla was just a child. The report detailed an incident where her mother had been accused of a crime she had never mentioned before. A crime that wasn't her fault, but something that had haunted her mother's past. Her heart pounded in her chest as the realization hit her. This was the secret Jake and Mr. Thompson had uncovered. This was the thing they'd been using to tear her down. Jake's voice broke through her dazed thoughts. Isn't it a lovely story, Shayla? Looks like you've got a real family history. How long do you think you could have kept it hidden? Shayla's chest tightened. She had no idea what they were talking about, what this meant for her family, for everything she'd worked for. But before she could say anything, Jake reached out and grabbed the file from her hands. I think it's time you realized the truth, he said coldly. You're not who you think you are. And now, neither is anyone else. Let us know where you are watching from in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe, like and turn on your notification bell so that you can be the first to enjoy our amazing stories. Shayla's mind spun. Her mother's past, hidden for years, now exposed to the world? But what did that have to do with her debate success? What could Jake and Mr. Thompson possibly gain from dragging all of this into the light? She stared at the file in horror. But then, a thought struck her like a lightning bolt. Had they been planning this for years? Had Jake and Mr. Thompson been working together, waiting for the right moment to strike? And the most terrifying question of all, was this part of something even bigger? She stepped back, her eyes darting between Jake and Mr. Thompson, the pieces finally beginning to fall into place. This wasn't just about her accent or her childhood. This was about something darker, something they were using to break her, to control her. But as Shayla took another step backward, something unexpected happened. Mr. Thompson's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it nervously. His expression shifted in an instant, from anger to fear. Get out of here, Shayla. It's already too late, Jake spat. But before she could turn to leave, Shayla saw it. In Mr. Thompson's eyes, the flicker of doubt. Something was wrong. Mr. Thompson wasn't on Jake's side after all. But why hadn't he stopped him earlier? Why was he letting all of this happen? Suddenly, Mr. Thompson turned to Jake. "We need to leave now," he said urgently. "Not yet. We have to finish this," Jake growled. As they argued, Shayla's mind raced. What was going to happen next? Before she could react, the sirens blared. The police arrived, their lights flashing across the street, their presence finally breaking the tense standoff. The moment had arrived. But who was on whose side? Shayla's pulse quickened. Who could she trust now? The sirens grew louder, cutting through the tension that hung thick in the air. Shayla's heart pounded in her chest as she looked at the approaching officers. Were they here to help her, or were they just another part of Jake and Mr. Thompson's game? The officers' uniforms glinted in the flashing lights, their presence a sudden reminder of how easily things could spiral out of control. She felt a rush of confusion, panic, and disbelief. Was this her life now? Would it always be this chaotic, this unpredictable? Jake seemed unfazed by the police, his smug grin never wavering. He shot a glance at Mr. Thompson, who was still holding his phone in his trembling hand. "Stay calm," Jake said, his voice low and confident. "This is just part of the plan." Shayla's eyes widened. What plan? What was he talking about? She had already learned the hard way that nothing was ever as it seemed when it came to Jake. The officers stepped toward them, their faces stern. Shayla could feel the weight of their gazes on her. Were they here to arrest her, too? After everything that had just happened, everything they had just dug up from her past, she wouldn't be surprised if they turned the tables and pinned the blame on her. "Is everything all right here?" one officer asked, looking at Shayla first, then turning to Jake and Mr. Thompson. Shayla opened her mouth to speak, but before she could say anything, Jake cut her off. "Everything's fine," he said with too much confidence, too much certainty. "Nothing to see here. We were just having a discussion." But the officer wasn't convinced. He eyed Jake with suspicion. A discussion? His eyes shifted between Jake and Mr. Thompson. "It looks more like a confrontation. Why don't you tell me what's going on?" Shayla's throat tightened. This was it, the moment of truth. She had to speak up, had to tell them what had really happened, had to tell them how Jake and Mr. Thompson had been manipulating everything from the start. But something stopped her. The file. The police report. Her mother's past was now exposed, and she wasn't sure what would happen if she revealed too much. Would they think she was just playing the victim, trying to cover up the truth? Jake seemed to notice her hesitation. He smiled, that same predatory grin that made Shayla's blood run cold. "You know, Shayla, you might be in over your head here. Maybe you should let the adults handle this." Shayla could feel her hands trembling at her sides, but her mind raced faster than ever. She couldn't let him control the narrative. She couldn't let him make her out to be the villain here. The officer turned his attention to Mr. Thompson, who stood stiff and silent, his eyes darting between Jake and Shayla. "Mr. Thompson?" the officer asked, his voice turning more authoritative. "Can you explain what's going on here?" Mr. Thompson's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. He looked at Shayla with a flash of something, guilt maybe, before his gaze dropped to the ground. Jake's eyes narrowed, his patience wearing thin. "This is ridiculous. We don't have to explain anything. We're just dealing with some personal matters. It's none of their business." The officer wasn't convinced. He motioned to another officer, who quickly pulled out a tablet and began scanning through the documents in front of him. Shayla felt a bead of sweat run down her back. Was she about to be dragged into something even worse? Her mind flickered back to the file in her hands, the police report that had been hidden from her for years. What if it came out? What if the truth about her mother's past was exposed in front of everyone? Could she handle that? "Is everything really okay?" the officer asked again, this time directing his question to Shayla. "We need to make sure no one's being coerced here." Shayla hesitated. She wanted to speak the truth, to tell them everything, but something in her gut told her that revealing too much might turn the tables on her. What if they didn't believe her? What if they sided with Jake and Mr. Thompson? She could feel the weight of their eyes on her. The tension in the air was suffocating. What was she supposed to say? Should she trust the officers? Or was she walking into a trap she hadn't seen coming? For a moment, time seemed to slow down. Everything around Shayla blurred as she tried to make sense of what was happening. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She had to make a choice that would change everything. Jake was standing there, confident, victorious, thinking he had already won. But Shayla wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Suddenly, a voice broke through the tension. "You need to listen to me." Shayla whipped around. It was Ms. Randall, the debate judge from earlier. She had appeared at the edge of the crowd, watching the scene unfold. Her presence was like a lifeline in the chaos. She walked up to the officers with authority. "This girl has been through enough. You need to hear the truth about what's been happening here." Shayla's heart skipped a beat. Ms. Randall was on her side. The officer turned his attention to Ms. Randall, his posture softening. "What truth?" "There's more to this than meets the eye," Ms. Randall said, her voice calm but firm. "I've seen these kids. I've seen Jake. I've seen Mr. Thompson. This isn't just a bullying case. It's a pattern of manipulation. And I think you need to investigate that." The officers exchanged glances, murmuring amongst themselves. Shayla could barely breathe as she waited for their response. Had Ms. Randall just saved her? Was this the turning point, the moment where everything could finally go right? But just as the officers began to pull Jake and Mr. Thompson aside for questioning, Shayla noticed something in the corner of her eye. A figure in the distance. Her eyes widened as she recognized the person walking toward them. Her mother. Shayla's heart leapt into her throat. What was she doing here? Had she been watching this whole time? But before she could run to her, a new voice cut through the air. "You've made a terrible mistake." Shayla froze, her body going cold. It was the principal, and in his hand, he held a letter. A letter that, judging by the look on his face, could change everything. Shayla stood frozen, her eyes locked on the principal as he walked toward them, the letter clenched tightly in his hand. The flashing lights from the police cars seemed to flicker in rhythm with the pounding of her heart. She could barely breathe. What was in that letter? Her mother, who had been standing quietly off to the side, was now making her way toward the group, her eyes wide with concern. The scene was growing more chaotic by the second, and Shayla's mind felt like it was spinning. The principal stopped just short of Shayla and held up the letter, his eyes meeting hers. "Shayla, I think it's time we set the record straight." Shayla's pulse raced as she took a step closer. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What's in the letter?" The principal turned to the officers, who were still standing in the background, waiting for further direction. "This letter," he began, "was sent to us by someone who had been keeping an eye on the situation for months. It's an official statement, a whistleblower's report about the actions of Jake and Mr. Thompson." The words hit Shayla like a freight train. A whistleblower? Who would have known enough to send a letter like that? And why now, in this moment of everything feeling like it was about to fall apart? The principal's voice softened. "We've been receiving complaints about Mr. Thompson for a while now. His behavior has been under scrutiny by several faculty members. The letter sheds light on not only his actions, but also Jake's role in targeting you, Shayla. It's all here." Shayla's mind reeled as she watched the principal hand the letter over to the officer in charge. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Jake and Mr. Thompson had been working together to tear her down for months. All of it, the bullying, the mockery, the sabotage, was a calculated scheme. They've been manipulating the system all along, using their positions to control the narrative and silence students like you. The principal's voice was steady, but Shayla could hear the weight behind his words. As the officer took the letter, it was clear that things were beginning to shift. This wasn't just a moment of personal betrayal for Shayla. It was about something much bigger. These people, these authority figures who had once made her feel small and insignificant, were finally being exposed for who they really were. Jake's face had gone pale. The smug, confident mask he'd worn for so long was cracking. "You can't do this," he muttered, his voice shaky. "Oh, but we can," the officer replied coldly. glancing at the letter. The officers immediately began taking statements from everyone involved, pulling Jake and Mr. Thompson aside for questioning. There was a sense of justice in the air, but it wasn't a sense Shayla was sure she could fully grasp just yet. Her eyes flicked to her mother, who was standing quietly behind her. The pain, the worry, the love in her mother's gaze, it was all there. And suddenly, all the tension, the fear, the anger she had been holding in for so long seemed to melt away. For the first time in what felt like forever, Shayla felt like she could finally breathe. She had done it. She had risen above the mockery, the hate, the fear. But the moment of relief was short-lived. As the officers continued to speak with the perpetrators, something caught Shayla's eye, a flash of movement near the corner of the parking lot. She turned sharply, her body tensing once more. It was Ms. Randall. The debate judge who had stood by her side earlier now approached with a stern look on her face. But this time, her expression was different. There was something almost maternal in the way she regarded Shayla. "I knew you could do it," Ms. Randall said softly, her voice filled with warmth. "But I also knew that you needed to see the truth before you could really claim your victory." Shayla stared at her, confused. What truth? Ms. Randall smiled, a soft but knowing smile. "You've been fighting for your voice, Shayla, for your power. And today, you didn't just win a debate tournament. You won your own freedom. You won the right to stand tall in the face of the lies and the hatred." Shayla's eyes welled up with tears. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear those words. All this time, she had been so focused on proving herself, on silencing the mockery and the hate that she had forgotten to give herself credit. She had already won. As Ms. Randall continued, Shayla's mind flashed back to everything that had led up to this moment. The mockery, the racism, the whispers behind her back, the insults about her accent, and the way she had been dismissed for so long. But now, everything had changed. She had changed. "I know you were angry, Shayla," Ms. Randall said gently, "but sometimes the fight is not just about winning the battle. It's about understanding that you are worthy of standing in your own power, no matter what anyone says about you." Shayla nodded, the tears welling in her eyes finally spilling over. For the first time in so long, she allowed herself to truly feel the weight of everything she had been through, and everything she had overcome. As the officers began to escort Jake and Mr. Thompson away, the crowd of onlookers slowly dissipated. It felt like the world was finally returning to a sense of normalcy, but it was a new kind of normal. Shayla stood there for a moment, the cool evening air brushing against her skin. Her mother was by her side, her arms wrapping around her in a tight hug. Shayla could feel the strength of her mother's love, a love that had never faltered, no matter how hard things had gotten. In that moment, Shayla realized something important. The true victory wasn't in the tournament, the accolades, or even the apology she might receive from those who had wronged her. The true victory was in finding her voice, her strength, and her belief in herself despite the challenges. And as she looked out at the fading lights of the police cars, Shayla made a silent promise to herself. She would never let anyone silence her again. Life lesson. Sometimes, the hardest battles are the ones fought within. We spend so much of our lives trying to prove ourselves to others, to make the world see us the way we see ourselves. But the real power comes when we stop asking for validation and start recognizing our own worth. No one has the right to define your story but you. Shayla's journey teaches us that the strongest victories come from standing in our truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. When we stop allowing others to dictate our narrative, we become the authors of our own lives. And remember, no matter how loud the mockery is, your voice will always rise above. Keep fighting, keep believing in yourself, and never let anyone take that from you.